But you stay in New Jersey.
Yeah, well, New Jersey, really, where I live, is actually the suburbs of New York. I mean, I only live half hour from New York City. My town, not to get on 9/11, my town was very badly hit during that event, and there's probably certainly not a week goes by that I don't see at least a wife without a husband or a child without a father from that event. And while I rarely write about it, it should be on every page. It'd be like if you wrote about America in 1973, and you don't mention the Vietnam War, but it's probably on every page. But I found curious what Alafair is saying about changing, because I had the same thing when I was writing 7 Myron Bolitar books, and I'm often asked why did I leave? And I don't know if Alafair said, I start with an idea, not with the character. And it's 3 reasons why I left. One is I start with an idea rather than a character, and I had an idea for a book with the man who had a wife who died, and of course Myron didn't have a wife who could get murdered, so he really couldn't tell the story. That was reason one. But also, with one of the things when you write series nowadays is you readers, which is great, you don't want Hercule Poirot or Sherlock Holmes anymore. You don't want characters who don't age or change and just solve crimes. I never wanted Myron just to solve a crime. I always wanted to be personal. I always wanted to be that special episode of Blossom, Myron Bolitar, where I never just wanted to. So the problem is, though, as he's aging and changing, how many catharses can a man go through before he's insane or like having his 4th appendectomy or whatever? And so I decided after 7 books, and I really put him through a lot. Dennis Lehane and I, when we used to tour together, would call it the Starsky and Hutch syndrome. Like, you ever watch Starsky and Hutch? There'd always been an episode where like Starsky would all of a sudden have a fiance, and she died at the 47-minute mark, and then he and Hutch would be in the rain at the graveyard. They walk away like this. Opening next episode, they're in a hot tub with new chicks. You know what I mean? You couldn't have that in a series because whatever happened to Myron in the previous book, you have to have in the next one. So I wasn't tired of him, but it really was. I'd beaten the hell out of this poor guy who sort of started off in Deal Breaker, sort of happy-go-lucky, and was turning depressing. And then when I left him, I didn't want to bring him back for the wrong reason. I didn't want to bring him back by popular demand, or to make a balloon mortgage payment, or the literary equivalent of the Harlem Globetrotters visits Gilligan's Island, just so people could see him. And then I had this idea for a book. It was another what if. I overheard teenagers talking about drinking and driving, and I said, promise me, title of that book, you won't do that. Use my card, my cell phone, I don't care how stoned you are, I don't care if it's 3 in the morning, I won't tell your parents, I'll drive you wherever you want to go, just promise me that won't happen. That was the end of it in real life, but the what if was, suppose they did call, suppose you did go pick her up, suppose you dropped her off at her friend's house, and poof, the next day she's gone, no one knows where she is. And then I say, who would tell this, who would be dumb enough and heroic enough with the hero complex to make this promise? And after 6 years, the answer was Myron Bolitar. So that's why I bring them back, and that's how I make the decision. I think of the idea. Do you think of the idea first, or do you start with the character?
That's actually how I stumbled into a second series. You were smart enough to at least make them standalone. I wound up with the second series. Is that I was starting my 4th book, and I had an idea. I met my cute husband over there on the internet. That guy pretending not to know me. He's very cute. But I met him on Match.com.
I think he's adorable.
I can now. I can now admit that without blushing too much. But
me too.
And so, like any hopeless romantic, I decided to write about it. And instead of writing about the great love that I found, I decided to think about a serial killer who used Match.com to find people and do horrible things to them. And I started to try to think of how I could make that a Samantha Kincaid book. But because everybody in Portland knows everybody, if you met somebody on the internet in Portland, Oregon, it would start out anonymous, but by the time you had dinner at the restaurant, you would figure out that, oh, they were the cousin of the person who lived down the hall with you. And so there's some kind of accountability, and that's how most people, when you started dating, you met somebody down the hall from you or across the street or in the next hall, the next Carol at the office. And so there's some accountability. If they turn out to just be a complete and total jerk, they at least have to worry about mutual friends picking you over them, or not talking to them for a few weeks, or not picking up the bar bill anymore because they were a jerk. And what I figured out about internet dating is there was no accountability. And Sean and I figured out, even though we have, I think, a lot in common, we have no buddy in common. We never had, and we can't figure out 6 degrees of separation between us. We never would have met if we had burned each other and lied to each other. There would have been no repercussions to that. And so I started to think about how somebody bad could use internet dating for bad things. And so that was a great idea, but it didn't work with Samantha Kincaid. And so I created a New York cop who would tell the story, but then I can't, you see, you love them and leave them with your characters. And
like that.
that's kind of hard though. Like,
I got enough commitment in my real life. I don't need that.
I love the characters in Caught, and I want them to come back, but I know that you're the kind of person who can just leave them on the side of the road and I may never see them again. And I couldn't do that with Ellie Hatcher. I wanted to keep writing about, and so I continued with her. So is anybody from Caught coming back?
Maybe. My favorite expression, which I use in every book, is "Man plans, God laughs." So I don't know. But it's kind of interesting because we're talking about like how you come to the idea. And whenever I'm talking about an author, I think we make it sound neater, like a neater process than it is. I always use the example of because really I think the process is more, and tell me if you agree, it's more like, you ever had one of those nights you can't fall asleep because you can't remember the name of the dog in Petticoat Junction? You know what I mean? Like just sitting there, what the hell was the name of that? There's Bobby Joe and Billy. And then you start wondering, how the hell did I think of something so stupid? And you try to trace your thoughts back, and you're bouncing all over. And it starts with something that has nothing to do with it. Like, how come they don't serve Mountain Dew with Burger King? You know what I mean? Like, it has nothing to do with one another. And I kind of find, and the example, the one I like to use as an example is Tell No One, because that's kind of more, I think, how a novel, rather than just a simple what if. I would start off in two different directions, if I could quickly tell you. So I think this is more how it works, and tell me if you agree with this. On the one hand, I was watching a really crummy romance movie on TV. I won't mention the name of the movie, Message in a Bottle. And Nicholas Sparks, good friend of mine, love this stuff. But that movie, and what struck me about that movie was, it was that story we've seen a lot where the man's wife dies, and he's sad, and he can't go on. And then a hot babe walks by, and he's fine. Have you noticed that in these movies, ladies? Like Angelina Jolie, or Robin Wright, or whoever. And he's all of a sudden the guy's perky, and I ask myself in those moments I get serious, what about the man who can't go on? What about the man who's truly lost his soulmate? Is there a way I can find redemption? So I have this part of the idea over here. And then I just had that there, and it's nowhere. And then a couple of weeks later I'm thinking, I lost my parents at a fairly young age, and the scenes I write between Myron and his parents, they get overly sentimental and all of that. That's my therapy. Tough. Skip them if you don't like them, but that's how I deal with my parents' death. It's cheaper than therapy. And I was thinking, I have 4 kids, and I was thinking the way we all do, wouldn't it be great if my parents were still alive? Wouldn't it be great if they could one day have seen their grandchildren? And as I'm doing this, I'm on a webcam, and I think, what would I do if I saw my parents right now on this webcam? So I took these 2 ideas and I mashed them together, and it's a man and a woman happily married. The wife is murdered. 8 years pass. He gets an email, he clicks a hyperlink, he sees a webcam, and his dead wife walks by. A little Homer Simpson part of my brain goes, woo! You get that woo? I mean, is that kind of more how, then this neat kind of what if thing that we always say, is that kind of more sort of how it works? Like it's just a mishmash of stuff?
Yeah, and I'm actually at the for me, I still consider it the beginning, which shows what a mismatch it is. I think I'm 20,000 or 25,000 words in, and I still have no idea what the book's about and who the main characters are or what's happening. And it really is, you have a character that grips you, or you have that moment. For me, the book, I actually got pressured to write this book now. It's a standalone, and I was up for a contract. You probably are well beyond that. You don't even have to tell them what you're writing. I know, but you don't have to tell them what you're writing. You just say, I'm Harlan Coben. They still make me say what I'm writing about. And so I had a real idea, and then I had a fake idea that was just like, maybe that'll be what my next book is about. I don't know if you've ever done the fake thing.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe this will be what my next book's about, or whatever. And but it was really just a scene, and it was this moment. And they found the moment so compelling that, that's your next book. And I'm like, no, because I really don't know what's going on with that. I have no idea what creates that moment. So for you, I think my guess, based on what you're calling it, just this moment, that you didn't have an explanation for why he would suddenly see a woman who was dead alive.
I did before I started the book. I mean, first of all, that process I explained, which took only about 15 minutes work, that's 3 months of work, ladies and gentlemen. That's 3 months of sitting on the couch going, no, honey, I can't throw out the garbage. I'm working. Can't you see I'm working? Hardest part of my job is convincing my wife I actually have one. But when I start, my cardinal rule used to be, and of course once you have rules you always break them, was I knew the beginning and I knew the end, and I had nothing in between. I compare it to driving from my home state of New Jersey across the country to LA. I may go Route 80, but chances are I'll go via the Suez Canal and stop in Tokyo. I always pretty much end up in LA. One of my favorite quotes from writing comes from E.L. Doctorow, and he said that writing is like driving at night in a fog.